video about communication, problems with arguing on YouTube, problems with words, definitions, and logical fallacies. This is also a drawing video, as well as a double response to vegan natalists Ask Yourself and Cory McCarthy, both of whom accused me of the logical fallacy called a straw man. They then proceeded to use logical fallacies themselves in their responses to me, so I think this is a topic worth discussing. One of the most famous quotes about satire came from Frederick the Great of Prussia. After straining to read a poster mocking him, he said, "It would have been more effective if hung lower." Satire is comedy, but comedy with a purpose. I made a satirical video about Ask Yourself's natalist position to get a reaction, provoke a conversation, and of course to mock or make fun of his views. In Wiljam has said that the objective of being on YouTube is to shove the truth in people's faces, hard, and that's what I'm here to do. As a utilitarian, I'll do what I must to achieve that end, even if it means using the occasional straw man. Because clearly, the truth that life sucks is denied by people like Ask Yourself. It's the same thing as denying that the world is round. They're trying to refute objective reality. They accept the "and then you die" part, but not the "life sucks" part of the famous phrase. By the way, the definition of a straw man fallacy is presenting a distorted view of someone and then attacking that instead of their real argument. Someone needed to point out Ask Yourself's emotional, contradictory reasoning, giant ego, and refusal to make response videos. He has offered to do text debates on his Discord, but I'm not interested in the chat room game, I'm interested in the YouTube game. Nobody knows what a Discord even is. I've made 3 response videos to him so far and gotten nothing. Superhuman Dance has made more videos than that and still not gotten a response video, so he's clearly dodging. His sycophant, Dr. Avi, said in a text comment that he thinks he can take on Wiljam and out-argue anti-natalism and negative utilitarianism, but he still hasn't done it, and he won't, because he knows that he can't. Finding a supposed contradiction or fallacy in Benatara's axiological asymmetry is not enough to disprove the fact that coming into existence is an imposition of harm. Using birth control does not cause significant harm. That fact cannot be out-argued. So they can play the fallacy game, or the meta game, or the pragmatic game, but those are all games that they will lose in the end. Natalism has no logical or ethical foundation to stand on, only tradition and emotion. The very same things that carnists use to defend their animal torturing habits. So Ask Yourself didn't find the video funny, which isn't shocking. Of course, my whole point in doing it was to get him to make a response video, thereby exposing his audience to anti-natalism. I wouldn't care if he shredded the video, lobbed every single logical fallacy at it, or even if he didn't mention it at all and just attacked anti-natalism. I thought that by making it funny and adding some value with artwork, he would be more likely to respond, but I thought wrong. He did leave a page-length comment on the video, which I did not reply to because I didn't want to have a text exchange with him, I wanted to have a video exchange. And honestly, I didn't grok a lot of it because it doesn't even make sense. He's saying I committed a level 9 straw man within a straw man or something? I don't know. That is a problem with Ask Yourself. He isn't hard to understand because he's smarter or better read than everyone else. He's just not very good at articulating his arguments in plain, simple to understand English. And in fact, he seems to do the opposite on purpose.
You acknowledged, one second. You acknowledged that it is contradictory to say Zychron does and doesn't have value with everything else held constant. You acknowledged that I did not establish what moral value is based on. What you have demonstrated right there, Zychron, is that I don't need to establish what moral value is based on to show that someone's assignment of moral value is contradictory. Concede the point.
But I can give him the citation he requires for his position, that well-being has more value than suffering. I've shown it in previous videos, just like I've already responded to everything he mentions in previous videos, like why realism is true and anti-realism is false. Links will be below to those videos. Ask Yourself says,
"My basic reason for not accepting it, not counting the hilarious flaws with your arguments."
Okay, what flaws? Also, I don't find this topic to be hilarious. It's as deadly serious a topic as one can discuss.
My evaluating would say there is more than enough good to justify the bad.
So there it is in black and white. More than enough good. So what is the good? Hashtag, name the well-being, please. He typed that with his own hands. How much more of a citation do you need? In fact, the whole video was based around that statement. Since you refused to say what constitutes the good in life, I had to imagine that it's maple syrup or cookies or sex or something like that. What else could it be? It's all just whatever gets him off personally. It doesn't really matter what it is. His good doesn't mean anything to me or a kid dying of cancer. Now, if he had cancer, then that would mean something to me. I really think that this argument is simply over his head. But anyways, his main criticism was that I strawmanned him and his position. It's actually not an unfair or inaccurate claim. That was the point, to exaggerate his argument on antinatalism because he has never made a video on the subject. He's just said that well-being, or the good, is greater than suffering and death, but he has not given reasons for that stance, leaving it to me and others to speculate. Nothing in his response has anything to do with the fundamental underlying argument. The subject here is antinatalism and why it fixes the problem of suffering. Please refute antinatalism or admit that you cannot. If he wants to play the fallacy game, then I can easily accuse him of the red herring fallacy. A red herring is a fallacious argument style in which an irrelevant or false topic is presented in an attempt to divert attention from the original issue. So, he's doing the exact same thing I just mocked him for, making a red herring argument and then claiming victory. That is the problem with guys like this who don't have any solid normative ethics. They don't get that giving a pig the quote-unquote gift of life so that they can be tortured to death in a slaughterhouse is no different than giving the gift to a child only for him or her to be tortured to death by an oncologist in a cancer ward. It's not much of a generalization of his position to call him a nihilist. Now he'll nitpick and say, "But I'm not a nihilist." Yet he's an anti-realist, moral relativist. Nihilist is a category of anti-realism. It's not much of a stretch. He thinks that his subjective opinion means more than objective facts about reality and utility. He has no logical basis for his veganism, he just feels bad for the cute animals.
But kids with cancer? Fuck 'em. Life is fucking beautiful. Therefore, cancer is beautiful. Enjoy your gift.
So go ahead and tell me how many times I just strawmanned in that paragraph and ignore the point I'm making entirely. He clearly has a psychological addiction to life, what in Mendham is called delusionary rainbow sickness, and what David Benatar calls the optimism bias, and therefore thinks it's great for everyone. This is just as short-sighted and as ignorant as any meat eater. You can either be pro-torture or anti-torture. I'm taking the position of anti-torture. I think that's a reasonable position to hold. Ask yourself, is pro-torture? He just said so in his own words. My video is different from a philosophical response in that it is a satire, a parody to be more specific. It's one thing to strawman an opponent in, say, a political or academic debate, but it's quite another if you're doing it for comedic effect. For example, when Tina Fey made fun of Sarah Palin by saying, "I can see Russia from my house," she was committing a strawman fallacy. Now, many people erroneously think Sarah Palin actually said that, but it's okay because it's only exaggerating her stupidity for the sake of comedy and ridicule. She is rightfully considered to be an idiot because she did say that because Russia is across the Bering Sea from Alaska, that somehow made her an expert in foreign relations. It's been called the Fey effect because it shows how satire can affect people with varying political views and make them more likely to focus on the specific characteristics that the satire lampoons, like Sarah Palin's inexperience and stupidity. Nowhere in Ask Yourself's response did he justify or even try to justify bringing someone into existence. That was all I was trying to accomplish, was to get him to think about how ridiculous his position is. I've already made 2 other response videos to him and received radio silence, so I felt like I had to step it up. I was inspired by Glynos' response videos, which are also satires. I've been trying to get a back and forth dialogue going with other YouTubers, and Superhuman Dance is the only person I've had any luck with at this point, but he's already a vegan antinatalist. I made a video response to a guy called Wessel Zapfe, who only gets around 10 views per video, and even he couldn't bother to make a response video back to me again, because again, I don't think there's any way he could make a logical response. He's an antinatalist who breeds hamsters for money. So at this point, I realized Ask Yourself was most likely never going to make a video about this subject for us to respond to. He would consider it a fallacy for me to even speculate why, but I presume that he knows he can't be logically consistent by calling unnecessary torturing of animals wrong, but the unnecessary torturing of humans acceptable. Everything I said in that video was a response to things he has said. For instance, he said he's not a Kantian, when in a recent video, he makes an arbitrary line in the sand where utilitarianism is distasteful to him personally, so he uses deontological ethics instead.
So one way to do that, for example, would be to have an underlying principle and say something like, okay, I will use deontology in the situations where the well-being to suffering trade-off of an action is not particularly large, and I'll use consequentialism when it is. So if I have a situation where it's kill 1 to save 2, I'm not going to do it. Fuck that. There's not a big enough trade-off that I'll switch to consequentialism there. Deontology is going to save those 2 people. But if you scale it up high enough and it's kill 1 to save 1 trillion, yeah, I'm going to kill that person, because the well-being to suffering trade-off at that point is so high that it falls into the area that's reserved for consequentialism.
So he just said that he uses deontology. Deontology is Kantianism, therefore he is a Kantian, even if he won't admit it. You can say a spade is a shovel and not a spade, if that's the word you want to use, but it's still the same thing. Ask yourself as a deontologist. Here's an example of straw manning for comedic effect from Ask Yourself's friend Vegan Gains, exaggerating about this tattooed calisthenics guy, Chris Heria.
For those of you who don't know Chris Heria, he runs the YouTube channel OFFICIALTHENX, and he also has a separate vlog channel where you can see his behind-the-scenes porn shoots. But both channels revolve around health and fitness, specializing in calisthenics or body weight exercises.
He said he has a quote-unquote porn channel, which is not true. He just makes really shallow music videos featuring scantily clad people. You could say he's lying or strawmanning this guy, but it's obvious he's exaggerating for comedic effect, that's all. Once you see what they were filming in context, it's clear that this is artistic expression, although lame, and not porn. Gaines also speculates that this guy has psychological reasons for promoting intermittent fasting, so you could perhaps call this strawmanning because this character never mentions these insecurities, but there is nothing wrong with analyzing someone's motives, especially if they are making strange, illogical arguments. Like, I believe Ask Yourself promotes nihilism because he hasn't tasted any significant pain yet. So he's a typical 20-something Pollyanna. He's too addicted and inexperienced to see life for what it really is. Just like a junkie who doesn't want to face the real cost of his habit. Now, he would ask me for a citation for that opinion, but I just use Occam's razor to eliminate all of the less likely reasons for him to be a natalist. But like any kind of speculation or psychoanalysis, one does have to be careful not to rely on it too much or use it as a concrete fact. Many popular historians tend to overuse this technique, which they call psychohistory. Because we may not have letters or diaries of long-dead people, these historians, who have an obligation to their publishers to sell as many books as possible, tend to psychoanalyze why someone did this or that. For instance, I read a biography of Alexander Hamilton where the author suggested that he was an abolitionist, even though there's no evidence for this. But there is a fucking receipt that still exists showing that he bought 2 human beings as one would buy a pet goldfish. The author just made that up to make his subject more modern and acceptable. That is why I'm drawing this straw man accidentally lighting himself on fire. Because if you use these techniques, you can get burned if you overuse them or use them irresponsibly. Clearly, I want to further the anti-natalist agenda, but I don't want to have to lie to do it. I will exaggerate an opponent's dumb views for comedy, though, if it suits me, and I don't see a problem with that. So that's all I have to say about Ask Yourself. He didn't give me much to work with, and he completely ignored the main argument of the video, as usual. I'll spend the majority of this video responding to another natalist vegan, because he actually did bother to make a response video to me, even though it was not funny or very nice. So, before he even opens his pie hole, racist much? Cory McCarthy has the nerve to call me retarded while he's wearing a t-shirt proclaiming that he is proud of something he had nothing to do with, something that took nothing to achieve, and something he was simply born into. But he's not just proud to be white, he is so proud that he put it on a t-shirt and then put a video of himself wearing it on the internet. Just saying, that's the kind of man we're dealing with here. But even if you don't think it's racist because you believe that a black person wearing a black pride t-shirt is a double standard, well, come on. White pride is ridiculous and not the same as black pride. Being born a white male in America is like winning the lottery to some extent. Would he really want to trade places with a black woman just so he could wear a racial pride t-shirt? It's stupid to take pride in where you were born, but black pride exists because they are treated like second-class citizens and have been for centuries, not because they hate white people. Besides that, having pride in something you didn't even earn, that you were born into, is really lame and entitled. It's like wearing a shirt proclaiming, First World Pride, or No Birth Deformity Pride. If you were black, wouldn't you find that shirt to be offensive? I think I would.
So I've decided to launch an informative and quite offensive new series called Talking to Retards, which YouTube will likely demonetize right from the starting gates for, at the very least, being hugely un-PC.
But hey, I'm sort of used to being demonetized.
Yes, quoting the Donald does make you look foolish, but you won't find many things less PC than antinatalism, a topic that McCarthy has never addressed, even though I made a direct response video to him showing the logical errors and ethical problems with his natalist position. Unlike McCarthy, I'm on YouTube for activism, not for making money off of suckers desperate to impress women. That's what all this bodybuilding shit is about, getting laid. Gotta get bigger than that guy so I can get the babes. Since McCarthy has little charisma or charm, he has to compensate with muscles. He's seen people like Kinobody and Durin Rider make huge bank off of videos and shitty ebooks, so he thought, hey, I can do that too. I will never monetize any of my videos. I'm here to force people like him to accept the truth, and I won't stop ramming it down his fucking throat because he's wrong and his audience needs to understand that.
And I will follow said stupid with my thoughtful insight and commentary on the topic, supported by research wherever possible. Now, given the plethora of dumb shit that people have excreted under my videos over the years, I no doubt will have an endless stream of content at my disposal for both your amusement and education, but hopefully mostly for your amusement. To kick this series off...
Well, I wouldn't call it thoughtful. And he's such an asshole he wiped out my name and icon in his response. It's because he doesn't want people to go to my channel where I've made 2 response videos to him, calling him out on his racist natalism and ignorant training and diet advice. That would make sense, but even if not, it's still a dick move. I stand by what I said, and I want people to know that I said it. When I reply to someone, I want the viewer to know who it is and where they can find them on the internet.
One particularly dopey specimen took this epic dump under my recent Vegan Gains response video. Cory McCarthy believes in the high-fat ketogenic diet, so can you really trust anything he has to say about how to eat? Intermittent fasting is just a starvation diet. You can starve yourself by eating small meals throughout the day too. Keto people like it because they eat high-fat, high-calorie, so they have to limit their meals. Muscle growth occurs from lifting weights, not from food, so don't expect any miracles from fasting. Literally everything about this comment is just wrong. Wrong to the same magnitude as this, whatever the fuck this is. A lot of what this guy wrote just strawmanned and or overgeneralizes the fuck out of my position on particular subjects, such as the ketogenic diet. And, worse yet, he uses said misrepresentation to suggest that no one should trust my nutrition advice.
No, you can't trust him. Not only does he promote a low-carb diet, he'll try to cover himself by saying, "But I only do it on certain days when I feel like it." This is the same thing as Ask Yourself saying that he only uses deontology sometimes. Again, when he feels like it. I don't give a shit how many days you do it, and you're promoting it on the internet. You represent the ketogenic, high-fat diet. Doesn't matter if you eat high-carb for one day or not. McCarthy is also an anti-gay homophobe, so he considers it a diss to compare me to a cross-dressing liberal, or SJW as he calls them. At least that guy is an activist trying to do what he thinks is right. I don't agree with his cause or personal fashion, but go ahead and compare me to a gay man. It's not offensive to me. In fact, I'll take it as a compliment because gays don't have kids. Some of the poorly designed t-shirts McCarthy sells also speak to his insecure masculinity. Don't be a pussy and don't be a bitch, because the greatest insult he can use against a man is to call him gay or to compare him to a woman. So classy.
But the part of his comment that features a particularly hard-to-beat, award-winning level of dumb is his proclamation that muscle growth occurs from lifting weights, not from food. Take a moment to let that digest before I continue.
So he accused me of strawmanning him, and here he is doing it to me. He somehow read my comment to mean that a human being can live without eating and sleeping. A person who only eats and sleeps is not going to have a muscular physique, is what I was saying. His YouTube channel features almost no training advice, just silly food hacks about building testosterone. Something he seems to be totally obsessed with. Maybe he has trouble getting it up, who knows. Everyone eats and sleeps, because if you don't, you die. Your diet and sleep schedule have to be really bad and nasty for it to seriously affect your progress doing high-intensity training. I made comments about this in response to Superhuman Dance before. Whether you get 7.5 or 8 hours sleep a night, that is not going to seriously affect your health. McCarthy is one of those life hack YouTubers who thinks that if he slightly alters his sleep and eating schedule, he will suddenly look like he's on steroids. You could eat potatoes 3 times a day, or smaller sized portions of potatoes 6 times a day, or just graze on mashed potatoes with even smaller portions throughout the day and do just fine. Eating is not complicated. That is why I hate his advice. Just in the same way that Ask Yourself will not commit to one normative ethical system, McCarthy cannot even commit himself to one type of diet or workout. He always has to find some new way to twist a weight around at the end of a rep so we can call it the McCarthy press, or alter keto and normal eating into the McCarthy beast mode diet trademark. He obviously wants to be rich and famous like Rich Piana so badly, but how someone wearing a white pride t-shirt on the internet is going to become a famous bodybuilder or fitness guru, I don't know. Seems kinda dumb, even in the Trump era. Arnold Schwarzenegger is commonly thought to have one of the most aesthetic-looking physiques of all time, and he famously only sleeps 6 hours a night. Because he has too much shit to do. Ellington Dardenne, who's a fitness and diet authority that I trust, says that current research tells us that about 8.5 hours of sleep a night is optimal in addition to a half-hour nap in the middle of the day. Who has time for that? For me at least, there's too much to do in the day to justify it. If I didn't have to work, maybe I could swing it. But the only way I can produce YouTube videos or work 2 jobs is to stay up late. Why doesn't he say how many inches you'll add to your quads with 15 minutes more sleep a night? How about some kind of figure regarding how much my biceps will grow if I eat a shitty high-fat diet like he does? He can't because it's bullshit. Yes, less sleep will slow your progress if you're trying to aggressively build muscle. But if you keep training, you'll still be muscular. You're not going to lose it all from a little insomnia or by skipping a meal. Besides that, McCarthy is already wrecking his progress by overtraining at low intensity. The body needs at least 2 to 3 days to recover from a high-intensity workout. McCarthy is in the gym every day, lifting weights at a high speed, over and over until he hits a certain number of repetitions, rather than doing one set to failure as is recommended by the discoveries of Arthur Jones. So he doesn't even understand recovery ability. It's really his response that qualifies as retarded. If you don't lift weights, your muscles will get bigger and stronger just from food? That seems to be what he's saying.
So it appears the calories we consume affect our body weight, and yes, that includes muscle mass. Well, fuck me, who'd have thought? But the plot thickens, just wait. Now, you may find this hard to believe, but it turns out that the types of food that we eat, of which those calories are comprised, also matters. I mean, holy living fuck, this is literally some game-changing shit here, folks.
Has he seen what pro bodybuilders eat? It's fucking garbage. Yet they have great-looking bodies. Genetics and training is what makes a body. You can sleep 6 hours a night or 10 hours a night. It's not going to affect your progress as much as your training routine and the genes you're born with. Why is it that in all of my muscle building books, eating and sleeping are at best 1 chapter's worth of information, but usually just a few paragraphs or a few sentences? Because you don't get a strong, muscular physique just by eating and sleeping. When I look at men who obviously lift, the first thing that comes to my mind is not, I wonder if he got 6 or 7 hours of sleep last night. It's, I wonder what kind of exercises he does to get his arms like that. There are a few lifters at work. Some are fat, some are lean. Obviously the fat ones consume more calories than they burn, but I can still tell that they're strong. What even is McCarthy's goal here? What is the progress he keeps talking about? If he just wants to be strong, it really doesn't matter if you're cut or not. If you want to be super lean, then you're going to have to sacrifice some size. That's just how it is. He could have belly fat, but we'll never know because he never shows himself shirtless. So then the video just resorts to dickish explanations of how calories affect weight, missing my point entirely. He's just got an agenda here, so please continue.
Yet another meta-analysis has confirmed that protein intake significantly enhances muscle strength and size in resistance-trained adults. And wow! We're even told how much protein is recommended to optimize our results.
This response video is just bizarre. Now he's talking about macronutrient ratios as if I'm a child. Clearly, as a critic of the ketogenic diet, I am aware of what macros are optimal for muscle gain and for health. During Ryder, I suggest an 80-10-10 ratio, which is very high carb, 80%. During Ryder is an endurance athlete, and he consumes massive amounts of calories, 3,000 to 5,000 a day, so it works for him. But it did not work for me, and it won't work for people who do not run or cycle for long distances every day. It is too low in fat to create satiation, the feeling of fullness. So I stick with what most nutritionists and the Nautilus Diet book by Ellington Dardenne recommend, about 55% carbs, 30% fats, and 15% protein. Someone who is cutting calories to lose weight should eat slightly less carbs, around 50-30-20, but when the weight is lost, they can increase their carbs gradually. McCarthy recommends eating massive amounts of fat and protein, very few carbs, and skipping breakfast, a stupid diet that creates the opposite of health. People who skip breakfast are more likely to gorge on their first meal later in the day. I would recommend just ignoring extreme fringe diets like Durian Ryder's and Cory McCarthy's. Again, eating doesn't have to be complicated.
What's more, it appears that dietary fat plays a crucial role in our endogenous sex hormone levels, like testosterone. For instance, low-fat diets appear to reduce testosterone levels in men. And what would you know? Testosterone appears to play a role in muscle growth.
So fat must play a hand in muscle growth too. Really interesting shit here, guys. I mean, grade A.
Ah, sarcasm. The lowest form of wit. And like I said, he is attacking a straw man here. I never insinuated in my comment that I did not have an understanding of nutrition. In fact, it is because I understand macros that I made the comment in the first place. Just in the same way that Ask Yourself uses the annoying argument tactic of appealing to fallacies constantly, McCarthy is one of those guys who uses an appeal to authority fallacy by throwing studies up on the screen and using them as facts to base his arguments on. For every study about ketogenic diets boosting testosterone, I can present others showing that it will lower testosterone. McCarthy also fails to mention other factors like stress that can significantly affect hormone levels. In my research, I found studies that provide evidence that high-carb diets increase testosterone levels and lower cortisol levels. But I also found analysis of multiple studies which concluded that the amount of dietary protein does not significantly influence the amount of bioavailable testosterone. So either way, he's full of shit. Even if low-carb diets increase testosterone levels, the negatives of a keto diet still outweigh any positives, and no diet is going to give you the results you will get from injecting testosterone. So if you're that obsessed with it, then just go see a doctor and get a shot, for Christ's sakes. McCarthy is chasing a rainbow that he believes is going to make him rich, but he's wasting his time. There is no gold to be found here. Even though he thinks that he can build a body similar to a steroid user with nutrition hacks, it's not possible. If you want to look like a bodybuilder, you're going to have to get on the gear no matter how good your genetics are. The only time I had sexual dysfunction was when I was on antidepressant drugs in my 20s. I've never had a problem since then on a high-carb diet. And besides that, we know from steroid users that too much testosterone causes anger issues, known as roid rage, and other undesirable side effects. Why not just keep it simple and eat a regular diet with regular meals every few hours? It's not rocket science.
Anyway, I think I'm just going to stop at this point, as I just feel ridiculous having actually cited research papers demonstrating the importance of food when it comes to muscle growth, even if my core intention was to be a dick.
Well, mission accomplished.
Personally, I find IF incredibly convenient. I can begin my days without needing to think about, prepare, or grab food, as typically I am on the fly in the mornings and have generally settled in by the afternoon hours. At the moment, I'm running a vegan ketogenic diet. For the unaware, that's higher fat, moderate protein, and lower carbs. Why, you may ask? Because I like changing things up now and then, and I also find that keto dieting helps me feel calm, chilled out even, and I am going through a rather stressful family medical situation at the moment, so I just felt like I needed those benefits more than ever.
So this is the real reason why he uses intermittent fasting and a ketogenic diet. He's just too lazy to make food, and he believes that a high-fat diet will make him, quote-unquote, chill. Oops, appeal to emotion fallacy right there. I'm sure he has time to pick out his clothes and take a shower in the morning, but eating is too hard. Even though it takes me about 5 minutes to throw together a fruit smoothie in the morning. That's just too much work. And McCarthy is anti-carb, so he won't even be eating any fruit meals, even though it's the most important food for preventing disease.
Now, I will not sit here and tell you that ketogenic diets are superior, because that is simply not true. And some folks absolutely hate running ketogenic diets. I am certain that outcomes vary by sport. For instance, I wouldn't recommend keto diet for an endurance athlete.
He even says that a ketogenic diet is not healthy long term, so why even do it at all?
Unlike with your standard ketogenic diet, once each week I cycle in a higher calorie carb feeding. Macro-wise, it's essentially the reverse of a typical keto day for about 8 hours straight in one day's time. Higher carb, moderate protein, lower fat. For this reason, this dietary method is known as cyclic ketogenic diet as opposed to just a ketogenic diet. This weekly feeding offsets the negative impacts on hormones and thyroid activity that can occur after prolonged periods of low carbohydrate consumption, or even just low calorie dieting for that matter.
For example, increases in cortisol.
This weekly feeding also helps refill glycogen, which helps support the weekly training ahead of me.
He could just train with high intensity instead of high volume and get an anti-inflammatory effect, as well as upregulating the uptake of glucose into the muscle cell, glucose utilization, and glycogen mobilization. But no, he'd rather work out 6 days a week instead of 2 because he either doesn't have the facts or he chooses to ignore them.
Since I've been intermittent fasting since 2015, I do not typically eat until 2 p.m. each day, whether keto or not. So up to that point in the day, I just drink coffee or tea or water as much as I desired. I try to remain as hydrated as possible.
Intermittent fasters also have to dose themselves with caffeine and other stimulant drugs to get through their starvation periods. That's not a healthy lifestyle. That's a drug addict lifestyle. If you eat properly, then you don't need to get addicted to stimulants. My types of workouts are especially cardio heavy, so just drinking caffeine and working out on an empty stomach would be counterproductive. Not that caffeine or drugs in general don't have their uses, but to rely on them every day because you're denying your body food is crazy. Cory's videos are full of pseudoscientific silliness like this. Many of the studies he presents are not the larger meta-analysis studies that Vegan Gains often uses. You can find some study or bad science to justify almost anything. What is more important is the scientific consensus, the findings of all the scientific data put together. Eating, training, and building muscle doesn't have to be complicated, but the more complex McCarthy can make his program, the more ebooks he can sell. That's why he was so triggered by my comment. It's similar to ones I've read on his channel before. It's a common criticism because it's true. But McCarthy's whole channel and brand is based on a food as steroids mythology. If you are hungry, if your stomach is rumbling, if your energy is low, then you need to eat, not drink coffee. If you deny yourself food, to me that is starving yourself. Like this jabroni who was on Dr. Oz recently. He pigs out on up to 5,000 calories in one sitting before bed, but the rest of his day he has to use stimulants to get by. So does Cory McCarthy, so does Kinobody, so do all of these low-carb morons. If you don't provide your body with carbohydrate fuel, then it can't function. Not eating before a workout, especially a high-intensity workout, is stupid to me. I don't use caffeine or stimulants, so I have to eat food, especially carbs, to fuel my training. To McCarthy, the definition of starvation is going for 48 hours or more without food, apparently. Where does this cutoff between fasting and starvation exist? To me, not eating when hungry is starving yourself. But for him, not eating for an entire day is fasting, because people who do these extreme diets then pig out on high-fat, high-calorie food for their 1 or 2 big meals. The way these people eat is called gorging. This extreme fasting advocate who, like McCarthy, wants to make a business out of bad advice, gorges himself on disgusting meat and cheese products around 1 in the morning before he goes to sleep. And then he starves, fasts, for 23 hours. If you stuff yourself with only 1 or 2 meals a day, between those meals, when you go for more than 6 hours without food and digestion is completed, the body thinks it's being starved. And it is being starved to some degree. After 5 to 6 hours, starvation syndrome goes into effect and the body will begin to preserve its fat stores to survive. So don't believe that it's a weight loss solution. It could lead to the exact opposite, as well as painful hunger pangs and an eating disorder. Research has shown that it pays to be a nibbler rather than a gorger. People who eat many small meals throughout the day are less likely to store fat. This has been nutritional advice for people who want to lose weight as well as for athletes for decades. So these guys who push ketogenic diets and weird extreme fasting are fringe freaks like the dumb YouTubers Vegetable Police and Tim Sheaf. Look at them now. Both are back on a meat diet because they starve themselves into retardation. I won't ever say that I am perfect or have all the answers, but one thing I don't do is sell diet and workout advice on the internet, so I don't have a reason to lie to you. The way I work out has the highest possible margin of safety possible. The way I eat is simple and satisfying. Ketogenic fasting is harmful and can lead to eating disorders and weight gain. High volume, low intensity weight training that McCarthy recommends is needless overtraining with no cardio benefits and an increased risk of injury. People asking for money in exchange for shitty advice need to be criticized. Only the natalist nihilist vegan Isel Mazard has been making response videos to McCarthy's voluminous nonsense besides me. I've already made videos about his training advice, racism, and natalism before, so those links will be down below, as well as some of Mazard's videos, which go into McCarthy's crazy views on politics. But just to warn you, Mazard himself is crazy, and since he is a nihilist, he is actually worse than McCarthy. But I like how he makes compilations of McCarthy's most outrageous statements. So this all started from a video Vegan Gains made of ripping apart this calisthenics guy, Chris Heria, who does intermittent fasting. He is a douche, but at least he does show what his physique looks like day after day. My model ever since I was a kid has been Bruce Lee, because he's my height, and his life story is an inspiration to me. Fasting can cause fatigue, headaches, and uncomfortable hunger pangs, so I'm going to stay away from it, as that lifestyle is not low risk. Add to the fact that idiots who do it also eat high-fat, low-carb, and you have a recipe for ill health. If you have diabetes or heart disease, then the consequences of intermittent fasting can be much more severe. Other drawbacks to intermittent fasting are food cravings, poor sleep, high-fat, low-nutrient food, and the thing McCarthy dreads the most, muscle loss. When carbohydrates aren't being consumed, the body switches to its backup stores in the liver, and once they are depleted, it begins to convert lean tissue into carbohydrate. The ratio of how much fat to muscle you will lose may vary depending on body composition, protein intake, and activity level, but this is how someone foolish enough to fast, without a good medical reason for doing so, can lose muscle. So what is McCarthy's reason for using a higher risk diet and exercise program? He's not a professional bodybuilder, he's not in competition shape, he supposedly trains people but also has a day job, so what's the urgency in trying all of these trendy extreme diets? He seems to clearly be unhappy with his body. I've achieved the physique I want for the most part, and found the safest way to maintain it. I don't know what he's trying to gain even more muscle for. For what purpose? Vanity? To attract women? Or is it to sell more ebooks? I lift for health and fitness personally. Looking good is just a convenient side effect. Like I said, if you want to get huge so fucking bad, then just get on steroids and be the big man you so desperately want to be. But who knows, maybe McCarthy's on gear already and just lies about it. I'll link to videos by During Rider and Vegan Gains who debunk this bizarre style of eating in longer videos. And Vegan Gains and During Rider both have many videos debunking the low-carb diet that Creepy Cory promotes to his suckers, subscribers. Ask Yourself and Cory McCarthy both claim that I strawman them, and then did the same to me. Why can't McCarthy or Ask Yourself just make a video refuting antinatalism, which is the main topic of this channel? Well, we all know the reason why. They can't, and that's the real problem here. They're going to keep dodging, so we have to keep loosing truth arrows at them. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts about logical fallacies in the comment section. Oh, and I also wanted to mention a comment that Ask Yourself made in his Discord. He accused me of deleting a comment of his on Let's Draw number 5, Natalist Nihilist Vegans. And for the record, I don't delete negative comments. I've only deleted one person's comments in the past year, and that's because one of Emendum's trolls showed up and was double posting to be a pest. One of the principles of this channel is keep it simple, stupid. So I'll continue to use generalizations, metaphors, and satire to expose the real views of natalists and make them easier to understand. People love their bullshit, and they love to lie to themselves, as evidenced by these two natalist vegans. If that is considered strawmanning, then so be it. But both of these guys are full of shit and need to be called out on it. And what is really important is not some person's views, it's the facts. The facts have to be clearly stated more than anything else. Facts like evolution, facts like suffering sucks. Thank you as always for watching, and remember that life sucks. Don't make things that suck. You could be creating the next Dupe Yourself or Creepy Cory, and we certainly don't need any more natalism on this planet.
I'm putting you out of your misery, 'cause darling, you're dragging me down. I wish I could say that I'm sorry, but I'm over that now. I'm taking